So moral injury is an injury to your soul. It's something we all know, and there's a whole billion-dollar industry devoted to our soul, right? From yoga to meditation to clothing to all these things that are going to help us center our soul. And so when you go to war, which I think all of us can agree that war is a version of hell on earth while you're there, you put on a lot of armor to try to protect that soul. But in the end, you're going to see things, have to do things, witness things, can't interfere, like, seeing a kid get beat as you're walking through the market. You're not allowed to interfere with that because that's not our culture. I mean, there's just so many layers of things that can happen during your deployment that can chip away at your soul.
This is the Veritable Veteran Podcast, bringing truth and exposure to the struggles veterans and their families face post-military. Depression, anger, PTSD, suicide. Who am I? What do I do now? Hey guys, so this week I have Eric Donoho on the show, and it was an amazing conversation. We actually talked for about 4 hours. So Eric is an author. He authored Canyon of Hope, and he's a speaker. He's a philanthropist. He's traveled the world. He's a retired Army sergeant, medically retired, received a Purple Heart. Great dude. Really good conversation. It's actually going to be put out in 2 parts because it was so long. So this is actually going to jump in right in the middle of our conversation, kind of, because we had been talking for about 30 minutes before I hit record. Because the conversation was so good, I didn't even realize I wasn't recording. So it kind of jumps in. There's not really a lot of intro. So that's why. But I just wanted to let you guys know it's a really good conversation. It'll be out in 2 parts, and I hope you guys enjoy. So we need, I'll go, but I can rearrange it and all that. It's fine. So just keep talking. I can rearrange it. So.
Well, and we can, and we can get back into it too. Let's just start, and I'll wrap us into this. If you're cool with it, we'll push that.
No, I'm definitely, because I definitely want to hear. I want to hear the different ideas and opinions, because I'm not sold on anything really. There's nothing that is happening right now that I'm like it should stay this way forever. Like almost nothing in my mind is like ingrained as to where it should be, that it's where it needs to be. It needs to be. There's a lot that needs to be changed, a lot that needs to be improved. And, I'm for looking at what I'm tired of. And I'll just say, I'll say it this way. I'm tired of people saying, well, this is the way we've always done it. Like, well, cool. That doesn't mean it's the right way. Like that there's gotta be better ways. And if there is a better way, why don't we look at it? So.
Well, it's like, this year I became a veteran for 15 years. So I was medically retired in 2009. So 15 years I've been a veteran. When I was medically retired in 2009, the suicide rate was 17 a day. That was put out from the VA. And the last report that came out from the VA is still 17.
Yeah.
So for 15 years, we've been creating programs. We've been throwing billions and billions of dollars, both on the private sector and the public sector. And we have not put a dent in veteran suicide.
Yeah.
And so for me, I look at it from a holistic standpoint. As someone who has spent so much time in DC working with both lawmakers, working with the VA, and working with all of these large veteran nonprofits, I might sound a little cynical here, but I'm not entirely sure the problem wants to get solved. If you solve the problem...
How dare you? How dare you? Right? And but I completely agree with you. I'm being facetious because Big Pharma doesn't want people to be healthy. They don't want people to be healthy because you can't sell pills to healthy people.
I will agree with that. But but I think it's worse than that. I
Yeah.
think it's that these organizations don't really, while they commit to doing it, I don't think that they really want to see veteran suicide end. Because if they do, there's nothing to fundraise on anymore.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
you have to follow
And
the
I
money in all of this. And it sounds
Yep.
really horrible to say, but it's true. And so I'll give you an example. Okay. When I
Mhm.
wrote my book, Canyon of Hope, it talks about how um, I went from sitting at my kitchen table wanting to end my life to now being someone who really tries to bring light, God's light and love, and shine that into dark places to give a hand up to people who need it, to organizations who need it. Um, and so, how did I get from wanting to end my life and not wanting to be here anymore to this place? And the reason that I ended up here was God. The reason that I didn't die in Iraq, in any of the roadside bombs that I was in the Katyusha rocket attack, was God. The
Yep.
reason that all of these things have happened, in my opinion, is because of God. Now, did I see that at the time? No, I was incredibly angry with him. And it took
Yeah.
me years to feel comfortable in saying that out loud. But when I wrote my book, I wanted to write my book because I saw it as a roadmap that isn't talked about in the veteran community at all, or very much at all. And that is moral injury. And so once I put my book out to the pre-readers, and mind you, I've worked in a number of these organizations on DC, helping pass all of the major veteran legislation that has gotten passed until this past year, including the PACT Act, the 988 Suicide Hotline Act, and so for me, all of these individuals and these groups who have been a part of that work encouraged this book. So it went out to them. And I heard things like, we're not going to promote a book that talks about fairy tales, meaning God.
Yeah.
Eric, we want you to stick around and we want you to help keep training new advocates. But while you're working with us, you can't talk about your book because we have a no God policy. And so it was just one call after another like this, and I found myself frustrated and angry. But I also didn't want to make it about me and my book because, that's not what it's about. I just felt
Right.
that like visceral anger. So I did what they taught me, right? Which is, let's look at the numbers. Let's see where the money is going. Let's ask some general questions. And so the first question I asked is, um, what group of all people committing suicide of veterans, what group is the most likely to commit suicide? And do you know what I found?
Mm-mm.
Moral injury. The VA out of New Jersey did a study and they found that the moral injury, those suffering from moral injury, are the most likely to actually pull the trigger on committing suicide.
Now, can you elaborate on what moral injury is? Because I know I have a pretty good idea of what it is, but I don't know that other people will. Can you elaborate on what that is?
Yeah, so moral injury is an injury to your soul. It's something we all know. And there's a whole billion-dollar industry devoted to our soul, right? From yoga to meditation to
Yep.
clothing to all these things that are going to help us center our soul. And
Right.
so when you go to war, which I think all of us can agree that war is a version of hell on earth while you're there, you put on a lot of armor to try to protect that soul. But in the end, you're going to see things, have to do things, or witness things, can't interfere, like, seeing a
Yep.
kid get beat, as you're walking through the market. You're not allowed to interfere with that because that's not our culture. I mean, there's just so many layers of things that can happen during your deployment that can chip away at your soul. And so, as you know, people who go there, we find ourselves putting on armor around that soul as it gets injured to try to keep that from happening. When we come home, we no longer need to keep that armor on, but we typically do. And
Yeah.
so, when you think about um, situations that we're talking about healing, ayahuasca, psilocybin, ibogaine, all of these ceremonies before you take this medicine have a spiritual component to it. And what you're
Yeah.
actually doing in during that experience and using that medicine is being able to quickly take off that armor, right? Versus like me, it took almost 8 years to really dig into and figure out where I was and that how
Yeah.
to pull off that armor and not crush that spirit underneath. And so, that's why I think those things can be good because you can speed up healing, but ultimately it comes back to this moral center, right? And the
Right.
harm that has been caused with that. Moral injury manifests all the same symptoms as PTSD does. So, like for me, ever since I had come home, I had been in therapy, continued therapy once I got out. But no matter how hard I was trying to enact all the things I was learning at therapy, nothing got better. Um,
Yeah.
and that was what led me to the kitchen table was because I just truly felt like I was a failure. I felt like nothing was ever going to change or get better or get easier to carry. And so I ended up at the kitchen table. And what I would learn on this journey over the last 10 years is that what drove me there was moral injury. So, moral injury manifests all the same symptoms as PTSD does, but it does not get better with PTSD treatment. So if you're a veteran out there and you've been putting in the work for 5, 6 years, and I mean, I would even say a couple of years, and you're not getting better, you should really be looking at moral injury in conjunction with PTSD. And you should
Yeah.
start putting some time in that area and just seeing, what do I think about this? Um, because I do believe that through faith and service, we can change our lives around and we can heal from moral injury. And so,
Yeah.
in learning all of this, I started to look at that data,
Yeah.
which then brought me back, brings us back to the VA. So, the VA's out of New Jersey, the number one group of veterans suffering from moral injury are most likely to commit suicide. Well, what individuals are most likely to suffer from moral injury? Those that have some sort of spiritual affiliation. So when you look at that and you look at current, secretary or Department of War numbers, I'm still getting used to that one.
I know.
And you
Yeah.
look at Department of War numbers, the current active duty military force, 71% identify as having some sort of spiritual affiliation. And
Yeah.
then, according to the Religious Freedom Institute, that grows to over 90% as veterans. And yet, when you go to
Wow.
any of these major VSOs across the board and you go to their websites and you type in moral injury, you get nothing.
Yeah.
Nothing. Over the past 15 years that I've been a veteran, there have been zero programs created for moral injury by DoD or VA. There are a few programs within the chaplain sector of the military, but they're very small and they're not really run in any real capacity because they're not funded. And so they're just an access point for um, pastors to work with soldiers one on one, I would say,
Yeah.
because they're not funded. And so there has been nothing. Now, for 15 years, $0 spent. Now, on the flip side, the second group that is at the highest risk of committing suicide is the LGBTQ plus community. I didn't know that. Really
Yeah.
honestly didn't know that. but I did want to know what was the numbers of that, community, and did we spend any money on it? And so the numbers on that, the best that I can find in the military itself, it's under 6%. And for the VA, we're just going to say under 10% because people do come out of the closet, as far as when they come out of the military. And I want to
Right.
be inclusive of them when we're talking about those numbers at the VA. So, you know, 10% or less. When you look at that over the past 10 years, I can't think of the number of programs. I'd have to pull out the one pager, but I do know, I remember distinctly this. It's a number of programs, multiple, like in the 30s, 40s of a number of programs, and they've spent $29.6 million on that group.
Yeah. And
Zero
that's for
on the group
the LGBTQ community.
plus. Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
And so that's all starting to change now, right? So that was a large aspect of what was happening under the previous administration. And you're going to
Yeah.
see those numbers with the LGBTQ go down, but you're also going to see suicide numbers go up. And so I'm not trying to say that they don't, you know, what doesn't deserve is out of that 29.6 million, what they aren't talking about is a lot of that is gender reassignment classification and hormone therapies and things along
Right.
those lines. That's all going away, right?
Yeah.
And so what you'll see is, I think, a trend of transgenders, even if they didn't um, make them ineligible to serve. I think you would see them coming down in numbers anyways, because
Right. Yeah.
and anecdotally, from what I understand from people who talk to me, who work with a lot of these individuals now, they're only there to get the free healthcare and the free transition. And
Right.
on top of that, they're non-deployable. So if you're
Yeah.
not deployable, I mean, should you really be in the active duty? Like,
Right. No, I agree. I mean, it's one of those things. The military is not a provider of free healthcare. I mean, they provide healthcare to its members, but if you're joining the military to get free healthcare, your priorities are mixed up. It's the same thing as joining the military only to get free college. I mean, that's again, do you get free college when you come out? You get a portion of it paid for by the VA? Yes. Through your benefits, through the GI Bill? Yeah. If that's your sole purpose in joining, you probably want to relook at your priorities and your reasons for doing what you're doing. No.
well, even
But
in that one, I mean, let's take the GI Bill, right? So we're talking about where money is spent.
yeah,
Um, the GI Bill, that isn't the biggest beneficiary of the post 9/11 GI Bill is not the veteran. It's the colleges and
wow.
universities that get the money.
Yeah.
So
That makes sense. I mean, yeah, that
it, the
unfortunately it
veteran
makes
gets
sense.
a stipend each month, right?
Yeah.
I, I'm not trying to say school doesn't have a place. School absolutely
Mhm.
has a place, but the post 9/11 GI Bill in itself is consistently something that is protected like gold, right?
Yeah.
So this idea that a veteran might want to start a small business because they were an electrician in the army, right?
Yeah.
Um, and they get out and they go and they pass their electrician's test, and now they're a licensed electrician in their state because this is all they did for 20 years.
Right.
Should be able to, instead of having to go back to school, should be able to access that GI Bill as a one-time grant to start up that
Yes.
small business.
Yes.
And this has been talked about for years. But
Yes.
every
Yep.
single time that bill gets introduced, the Student Veterans of America and the VFW immediately crush that bill.
Yeah.
Done. And
Yeah.
never
And
moves.
why would they do that? Why?
Follow the money.
I know.
biggest
And that's,
donors of VFW and
yep,
SBA all route through colleges and universities and individuals who work with colleges and universities.
yep. And that's because,
Plus,
again, how much more would that help these veterans that have the ability and have the desire to start a small business? And
not, not just
yeah,
veterans, local
yeah,
communities.
yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, and not only just the veteran that starts the business, but they could hire other veterans. They hire people in the community. They have new jobs. They have new opportunities. And
They have purpose.
yes,
And and
yeah,
and
and
it's
that,
not like that you just get this free money. They got to go through a series of things. You got to go through a business boot camp, a couple of weeks long that teach you how to write your business plan, have a mentor
yep,
in place, have things in place that will statistically and give you a upper hand when it comes to starting a new business.
yeah,
No business is guaranteed to succeed, but
right,
the more you front load the information we know on what makes businesses succeed,
hmm,
and people are like, oh, because all we do is paint veterans as broken. So these
right,
same VSOs are in DC, and they consistently are talking about all the things we need because we're broken. And yet none of them are talking about how I believe it was, and I'm probably understating, if anything, but in the year 2023, veteran small owned businesses added $1.2 trillion to our country's GDP.
yeah.
Like,
Why would you
I'm
not
sorry,
want
we're
that?
broken.
Yeah, right. And why
I
would
know
you not want to
veterans
enable
who
that?
are
Like
in,
that?
sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just saying, why would you not want to endorse that and push that? Like, it's working. It's pulling these veterans out of these places of, I don't know what I'm supposed to do with myself. Like, they're benefiting themselves, they're benefiting the community, they're benefiting the entire country. And yet they push back on the idea of giving these guys money to help start small businesses. It doesn't make sense. The only way it would make sense is if somebody somewhere is going to lose out on some money and they're pushing back against it.
Well, and they'll say, these businesses, there's no guaranteed success.
Hmm.
There's no guarantee the success rate of the GI Bill and the veterans graduating from the GI Bill is abysmal. It's
Yeah.
under
I-
50%.
And that's what I was just going to say. Where's the guarantee that someone's going to graduate with the GI Bill and use that degree to do anything? Like, like I tell my kids, my son's almost 15. He'll be 15 in 6 days. And he's always asking, for a while he was asking, you know, where should I go to college and what should I do? And I was like, okay, I want you to stop saying, where should I go to college? Because you don't have to go to college. You don't have to. If you want to, cool, go ahead. But I don't want you to run out and go to college simply to say, I'm going to college.
Right.
Like, what do you want to do with your life? Like right now, he wants to be a chef. I'm like, cool. So if you don't have this plan in mind and you just go to college and you go to get a degree in whatever, like business or criminal justice or whatever it is, and then you decide, actually, I want to be a chef. Now you have to go and go to a culinary school and all this other stuff. And you have this degree and this debt that is useless. I mean, there's absolutely no purpose to having this. And again, and I told him, if you want to be a doctor, you got to go to college. You got to go get a degree. You got to go to pre-med. You got to go to medical school. You got to do all this stuff. So you have to do that. But rather than telling our children and telling these guys, you have to go to school to be able to do anything, it's not true. There's certain jobs that you have to have a degree for. There's certain jobs that you have to
Right.
go to school and get certifications and these other things. But as a society, we've pushed education so hard for the last 70 years. That may not be an accurate number, but I'm saying at least 70 years, saying you have to have a degree. You need to go to college. Without it, you're not going to be able to succeed. So all these guys go, and now a degree is like a minimum requirement. Like if you
Right.
don't have a bachelor's degree, we're not even going to look at you. And it's like, I, I had, like when I got out of the military, I had 11 years in the Marine Corps. I was an E6. I had all these, like a ton of training, a ton of different courses and all these certifications. And they're like, yeah, but you don't have a bachelor's degree. And I'm like, okay, I have years of experience doing these specific things that I'm trying to apply for. And you're telling me that I'm not qualified simply because I didn't sit through 4 years of higher education.
Well,
And it's so frustrating. But that's again
that's
that
another thing, right? So why aren't these groups advocating on the Hill for people who have served 4, 5, or more years in the military, that they come out with some sort of Bachelor of Arts degree in
yes.
something, right? Where just
When
general
I
studies, because
yes, exactly.
the reality is that, as a business owner, right? If I when I'm looking to do, like, I'm, I don't hire hourly, right? The first salary position for my company will go to my wife, and I'll be lucky to be able to afford her. Truly. Um, I mean, she's a rock star when it comes to a whole lot of things. And so, but I do a whole lot of independent contracting, working with contractors, consultants to help me grow, right? And the
Yeah.
first thing that I look to is not degrees, it's effectiveness, right?
Hmm.
Like, how effective are you? And why should I give you my money?
Yeah.
I don't give a fuck about your degree. Excuse me, I don't know if I'm allowed to cuss on your podcast or not,
Yep.
but
You're fine.
I just don't give a fuck,
Yeah.
because your degree doesn't tell me how seriously you took school.
Yes.
Your degree
Exactly.
doesn't tell me that you got straight A's and graduated unless you voluntarily put that information down,
Right.
right? Like, so I don't know. And even in that, you can be incredibly book smart, but you can be incredibly dumb when it comes to just common sense.
Yes.
And I in
Exactly.
business and in today's world, you need both. And
Yeah.
so when you look at the veteran who's coming out, sure, they do stupid stuff, and yes, they do party, but the overwhelming majority of veterans that are coming out are more well-rounded. They have better manners. They have better common courtesies. They show up on time, meaning
Yes.
early rather than late. They do their work. You don't have to micromanage them. And I'm not saying that's across the board, but a good
Yep.
80% of veterans that I work with. You look at a lot of these young college graduates that get out and are in these worlds starting these businesses for themselves, and it's like,
Yeah.
um,
Well, the
I'm
second things get
sorry,
hard, they don't know
you
what to do.
graduated,
Yeah.
you don't know what's going on in like a
Yeah.
conversation. uh, I'll give you a conversation. Some of these young people don't even know what's happening in the world. And so
Yeah.
my brand, I got to understand, generally, and be able to speak generally about all things military that are happening in the world. And so if you don't know the Houthis and who they are and what they're doing and the effects that they're causing on shipping and
Yeah.
why we're bombing them, then how can you help me in my business at all?
Yeah.
And why
Yep.
wouldn't you know those things? Why wouldn't you want to be up to date on public affairs or anything else? And see, I think that's where we've gotten away from. We've gotten away from smart, and we've
Yeah.
moved to TikTok.
Yeah.
I call it, China's playing chess and we're playing beer pong.
Yeah. That
And
is
that's really where
a
we're
lot
at.
more
And I
true than people realize.
Yeah, and people will say, "Well, how did you get from there to there?" Right? Because that's a big jump in what I just said. Um,
Yeah.
but that's why I made that big jump, because go prove me wrong.
Yeah. Yep. Exactly. And you can't. And that's the thing is once people start looking at these things and opening their eyes and realizing like this doesn't make a whole lot of sense because like if we did this, things could be better, but why aren't we doing it?
Right.
And it's like, you're right. Why aren't we doing it? And then you just kind of let them follow the trail. And it's, eventually they come back and they're like, it seems like there may be some more kind of like nefarious activity going on. Like, oh, really?
Well,
Really? Is that what you found?
I'll
Shocking.
give you an example. Paul Rieckhoff. You know who he is?
I don't think so.
Okay. Founder of Iraq and Afghanistan Veterans of America. And he's a national security pundit on a number of different news platforms. You'll see him on CNN,
Yeah.
MSNBC, I think Newsmax. I'm not exactly sure. I've known Paul for a long time.
Yeah.
Um, and most people see him as a left wing, you know, kind of provocateur, but he sees himself as an independent who probably leans more left than right. Okay,
Okay.
no big deal. For
Yeah.
years, we've gotten along, been great friends. Fast forward to this administration, right? Tulsi Gabbard, somebody that he has worked with closely at IAVA. I worked with closely at IAVA. I've always found her to be amazing. Like, honestly, like, you know how you can tell when people are kind of bullshitting you and
Yeah.
and then people are just being real and they're like, fuck
Yeah.
it, I just don't give a
Yeah.
fuck.
They're like,
You
yeah,
know what I
it's
mean? Like,
me. I
I'm
don't
just
care.
gonna say it and it
Yeah.
is what it is. Tulsi has always been that person, at least while I'm around and while I've interacted with her. I've never known her to play that politician role when I've been
Yeah.
around her. Now, Paul was upset and didn't think that she should become the DNI. So he's on, all of these channels talking about how she could potentially be a Russian plant and all of this stuff and a national security threat and going on and on and on. And so in November of last year, I got a whole bunch of flack because all of those VSOs that are in DC, the majority of them took $1 million from TikTok, i.e., China, um, and to go onto TikTok and to start doing their work like they do on, advocacy work on Instagram and Facebook and Twitter. They wanted them on TikTok, right? They want to start
Yeah.
veterans to TikTok because if veterans are on TikTok, the approval rating for TikTok will go up. Now,
Right.
all of that's kind of changing. It looks like maybe 20% is still going to be owned by China, according to the things I read today and saw in the press.
Right.
All of that being said, as of now, TikTok is still a Chinese owned company.
Yeah.
And and in China, they have a law that says, all of their all of China, any Chinese owned company, their data is property of the government, meaning the government
Right.
can go in there and look at whatever they want. And so, don't take my word for it, but just think about this from a psyops perspective. What can you do knowing all of the veterans in our society and being able to reach them in just a few clicks?
Yeah.
I mean, from a psyops standpoint, you could turn on veteran suicide, you could turn it up, you could turn it down, you could convince people to do this, you could convince people to do that. And it's not run by an American company, which means there are no American laws that, you know, protect us, the veteran, right? We're the
Yeah.
commodity that's being sold right now. And so I started rallying against that because, there's all kinds of things. There's the, they needed to, one of the things that I brought up is, did they register as a foreign agent? You remember
Yeah.
General Flynn and what he got in trouble for? This is no different. TikTok was very clear in their press release when this came out that this was about changing the narrative that was around TikTok last year in November, which was slated to get banned and canceled.
Yeah.
Um, so when we look at all of that, um, Paul was sitting there talking about how, they're going to sell us out. And I just simply was like, well, I mean, you mean like you did and your organization did to China? I'm like, you're a national security guy.
Yeah.
You're on the board. You're the founder. You could have at
Yep.
any point stepped in and said, hey, like, we're not going to take this over my dead body. This is my organization. I founded it. I still sit on the board. Absolutely not.
Yeah.
Instead, he said, I was against it. Everyone else was for it.
Yeah.
So go talk to the rest of the board. Go take it to them. So long story short, Paul ended up blocking me
Yeah.
because he couldn't handle the same criticism that he was giving Hegseth, that he was giving
Yeah.
Tulsi, right? Because none of these people live in a glass house. I'm not saying Tulsi is the end all to end alls. Not saying Hegseth is the end all to end alls. I don't, from my
Yeah.
interactions that I have had with them, they've been good. But I've had lots of great interactions with people that I would say lots of that about, right? And so,
Yeah. Yep.
like, my point is that, all of these people are doing things ultimately at the end of the day to get them somewhere.
Yeah.
And the people who get the most pushback are the ones who don't give a shit and don't have some agenda where they're trying to get themselves to. They're just sitting there going, this is fucked up.
Yeah.
And we could solve this by doing X, Y, and Z. Why aren't
Yeah.
we doing it? Like,
Yeah.
we want to know an accurate number of veterans who are committing suicide every year. 15 years ago, this was being talked about. I know 10 years ago, this was a big conversation, and I know why
Yeah.
it got canceled. All you have to do to know the accurate numbers require every coroner in America to ask one question when they show up to a suicide and rule something a suicide. Is
Yep.
this individual a veteran? And
Yep.
check the box. It automatically already gets uploaded into a database. None of
Yes.
this is new. The problem is it would have costed the municipalities and counties and cities and states millions of dollars. And so they didn't want to push that onto the state.
Which, let's be real, how much is millions of dollars nowadays? I mean, we're how many trillions of dollars in debt, and they want to complain about a couple of $1,000,000?
Well, and if you look at this, data is what allows us to move forward, right? In a
Yeah.
concerted effort. So
Yeah.
if you don't have the data, you're just throwing darts
Yeah.
blindly. And so if you can get the data for, say, 200 million, you just saved the taxpayers over the last 15 years a shit ton of money, billions
Yeah.
and billions and billions of dollars, because
Yep.
they would not have known none of these programs are going to work.
Yeah. And I feel like I had a conversation with a guy, the episode that I just released. He was talking about how the VA just kept giving, or not the VA, the military medicine at the time when he was still active duty, just kept treating the symptoms and giving, because he had a broken ankle. And then he blew out his knee, like some of the soft tissue in his knee. I don't remember exactly what it was, but it was the soft tissue. They did an x-ray, and he's like, an x-ray is not going to show you the soft tissue damage. It's going to show you if there's anything wrong with the bone. There's nothing wrong with the bone, so they gave him some Tylenol and sent him home. And then when he injured his shoulder, they did an x-ray, and it's like, it's not a bone injury. It's not a structural injury. It's a soft tissue injury. And it took him years to get an MRI. And it's just and all that to say, the VA the military and the VA have a very long track record of treating symptoms, and they don't want to treat the root issue. They don't want to go after the root cause of these problems and actually fix it. And
That's not the goal.
it,
The
no,
goal of the VA public health is a model to show the rest of the country what socialized medicine looks like and why we should have socialized medicine because
Yeah.
we have it so well in the VA.
Yeah.
And that, I mean, that's the absolute truth.
Mhm.
In the
Yeah.
beginning, the reason they did VA public health is because they really believed that they could do it cheaper with these regional VA centers that veterans would come to and almost live at, right? But
Right.
we went away from that model, state hospitals, and we went into these clinics. We've got to build clinics. We've got to do this. We've got to do that. We've got to expand. We've got to reach all of these rural veterans. So we're basically building out a state of the art hospital system with the American taxpayer dollar
Yeah.
for less than 10% of Americans who can use it.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, but at some point, Americans are going who are suffering right now, right? Middle class Americans are suffering. Lower middle class is like, I just want to hang on, right? Middle
Yeah.
class is like, I don't want to fall to lower middle class, and everything is shifting, right?
Yeah.
And so at some point, the people who didn't serve are going to look at us and they're going to say, why are we spending all of this money on such a small fraction of our people when we could do it cheaper?
Yeah. Yeah.
And and then what will end up being said, right, is they'll look at, instead of how can we do healthcare better? How can we do education or grants to start small businesses better? How can we, you know, move the VA into a 21st century that actually works without, continually adding things to contracts, that we never signed, right?
Yeah.
Like when I go to DC, I fight for things that I signed in my contract, not for things that I want. That's
Yeah.
like, you don't get to do that. And so there's a number of things for me that I've always just kind of found odd when I've gone to DC and when I've worked and I've done all of this sort of work on the Hill. And what I've come to the realization is it's just about a flow of money. And it's about keeping that flow of money open. And who is that flow of money going to? When you look
Yeah.
at VA public health, right? So I've heard this statistic. I've seen it. I don't know 100% if it's true. I can point a number of places that they cite this. I just can't find like a VA study that cites this. Um, 70% of doctors and nurses are trained some point through the VA public health system. So if that's the
Wow.
case,
I didn't
and
know that.
they're training them and we're paying for their training, right? So then we recruit them and, during their training phase, right? So they go to medical school, they come to us for their training, right? For the medical
Yeah.
school. Well, medical schools aren't, I mean, I know some of them provide their own, hospitals and so forth like that, but they don't have enough space for all the people they take in. So they push them to other community and local hospitals, the VA being one of them. And they go in there and they do their work. And the VA then, as they're doing their work, recruits them. So my understanding is when they get sent over there, the VA is not getting payments from the school, right? So the school should
Okay.
be paying the hospital for training these doctors
Yeah.
because the school is getting paid by the student. From
Yeah.
my understanding, that isn't happening. So, number one, pile of
Yeah.
money going back to the school, right? And
Yeah.
then and again, I'm willing to say, hey, maybe my facts and my understanding on this are wrong, but again, I've just read too much of this information for it to be solidly wrong, right? You know what I
Right.
mean? Like I'm willing to say somebody might be trying to skew the arguments that I've read into a conservative narrative, but the reality is um I do believe it's actually happening. The scale of what it is and in numbers, I don't feel like I can accurately quote, which is why I'm giving the, you know, a little bit of room for grace here, right? So if
Right.
they're not paying the doctors, or if they're not paying for the training, and we're recruiting the doctors there, and now we're paying the doctors a bonus to come over here and work at the VA when they get done with the hospital, we're effectively competing with the public health sector. We're taking doctors and nurses away where there's already a shortage. And then we're encouraging them to come work. We're giving bonuses up to $250,000. And then after, I believe it's 5 years, they get all of their school bills paid for, through a reimbursement
Wow.
program, their
And
student
that's through
loans.
the VA hospitals or the
Yeah,
VA
right.
healthcare.
That's to retain doctors and medical staff. So most doctors and medical staff will only last, again, information I've seen typically has come from a more conservative think group. So I'm putting that out there, right? Like,
Yep.
trying to be honest, but I do think it's funny when you dig into this independently, because it all supports it. Um, they get the money from there. The doctors come over. The 5 years they spend 5 years, 5.5, 6 years there. They're gone. We've paid all of this money, and the cycle keeps repeating itself. Not to mention the amount of money that it takes to upkeep the buildings, the staff to manage those buildings, and everything
Yeah.
that goes along down the line. So then when you ask, to your reference about an MRI, when you ask a
Hmm.
VA hospital, how much does it cost you to give a veteran an MRI? They can't actually tell you.
So what do
There is
you
no
what?
standard form across the country that
Yeah.
says this is what an MRI should cost at a VA hospital.
Yeah.
Each state gets a pool of money. And then, depending on the size of the institute, that pool of money gets distributed between each of those facilities. And then the person who runs the facilities decides how that pool of money is going to get spent, because it
Yeah.
needs to cover all of these positions. It needs to cover the maintenance of the equipment, the building, the doctors, all of that. You're telling me we can't save money if we give every veteran out there a deductible free insurance card that covers them for whatever they're getting currently at the VA.
Yeah.
It covers them for that, deductible free. You're telling me we wouldn't save money? Like, especially if the VA managed the claims center themselves, which is what I advocate for, because then it truly is keeping it a public situation, right? You're
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
incentivizing a profit off of this, right? We're
Right.
looking at this as we need to be stewards, good stewards of the taxpayers' money. And the best
Yeah.
way to do that is that the VA administration do what their name actually calls for, which is to administrate the claims and to
Yeah.
allow the health system we already have in America to treat our veterans. And so what this does, I mean, like, when you really dig into this idea, it's huge, because it puts the power with the veteran and the doctor, right? So
Yeah.
let's say let's use me for example. When I got thyroid cancer, right? I was 45 years old, somewhere in there, when I found out that I had thyroid cancer. And because I have private insurance, I was able to have the best doctor and the best, surgeon and all of that. But my endocrinologist who diagnosed me was like, this is not normal for someone your age to be experiencing thyroid cancer. Where
Yeah.
this is, all of it, it's not normal. I attribute this to the burn pits that you were probably exposed to in Iraq. Now, if
Yep.
that doctor, so, we're sitting here and I got this insurance card that I go in and see. Now, that doctor can make that call right then and there and say, this, in my determination and judgment, is related to what you were exposed to in Iraq, in Afghanistan, wherever. And so we're going to run this up to the claims center immediately, which
Yeah.
means you may not be getting your compensation and disability right away because you got
Right.
to get that adjudicated, but
Right.
you can immediately get um, better benefits as far as health goes and get treated so that you're not spending a year or 2 years trying to treat something. It's
Yeah.
immediate because the doctor tied it to your service. Doesn't mean you're
Right.
going to get disability and compensation. It just means the government's going to cover that health care for that surgery for your knee, for your back. End of
Yeah.
story.
For your thyroid cancer that you shouldn't
Thyroid
have
care.
when you're that age. Yeah.
Right. I mean, so all of these things, and then you have to ask yourself why. Well, who gets the biggest benefit from this? Again, out of the VA, if you look at the biggest recipient of VA money overall, I don't know if I'd say it's the veteran.
Yeah.
Only reason we'd be close to it if it was the veteran is because of disability and compensation. Otherwise, I'd
Right.
say colleges and universities are actually the biggest beneficiary of veteran dollars that come out of the VA. And those institutions are then encouraging veterans to, lean in one direction more than another. They
Yeah.
theorize stuff and they encourage veterans to look at the things we're talking about, not from a moral injury perspective, not from a soul perspective, not from a faith perspective, but from an intellectual God doesn't exist perspective.
Right. And that,
And so
uh,
when you look at who's in DC and the majority
mhm.
of the people who are doing this work in DC, the majority of them are um, left leaning
Yeah.
progressives.
Yep. Well, they've been through the the indoctrination that is higher education in our country, that pushes people to believe a certain way, and we can, why don't we just piss everybody off today and just talk about Charlie Kirk for a second? That's what he
Yeah,
was
no,
fighting against was
yeah,
going on, was going on college campuses and saying these institutions are not for education, they're for indoctrination.
yeah,
He's asking people, this guy's an English major and he's like, what's your favorite, you know, I can't remember the name. He's like, what's your favorite novel written by, I think it was Jane Austen. And he's
yeah,
like, I don't even know who that is. And he's like, you don't even know who that is? Like, are you kidding me? And then he's talking about economics. He goes, what do you think about Thomas Sowell? And they're like, he's like, I don't know who that is. And he's like, you talking about economics and you don't know who Thomas Sowell is. Like, again, he's like, he's not making fun of these kids. He's like, you don't know who these guys are because they don't want you to know who they are. And that's the
right.
point. And I, that's one of the reasons he was so hated. Now, the whole thing with him getting assassinated, that's a whole nother rabbit trail.
Yeah,
It's horrible. And I think there's stuff that they're not telling us. But again, that's not, I don't think that's a conversation for this podcast necessarily, but it's, that was what he was fighting against was the fact that these institutions of higher learning are becoming indoctrination centers. And the GI Bill pushes people to go to college, pushes people to go, you know, uh, to these institutions to get, education. And it's,
it's
like
like
what you have said, it's they're the ones getting the money and they're handing out these diplomas or not diploma degrees, and on this degree, can you use it? Maybe, and a lot of times you don't even have to try to get the degree. You just show up to class, you do the bare minimum, and you graduate, and you have the same piece of paper on your wall that somebody who tried really, really hard does.
right.
Um, but
It's
yeah,
a it, we you, you're not gonna so I'm a guy that's got 135 college credits and I don't have a college degree
yeah,
because I went to different schools, but it's things like they were like, you need to learn a foreign language. And I'm like, I don't want to.
why? Why do I need a foreign language?
I'm like, I don't want to. I don't have any interest in that. And if I'm not interested in the class, I'm not going to do well. And
Yeah,
I'm not going to spend my money on not doing well. And so there are little things like that. And those are little reasons that I haven't graduated.
Yeah.
And what I learned is in all of these things, right? College is really just a marketing, the most successful marketing campaign ever was college and
Yeah.
universities.
Yeah.
And the reason for that is because we've told an entire generation of kids that you need to go to college, you need to go to college. That's how you better your life.
Yes.
How is that going to work out by 2030 when AI is computed at is computing at a level none of us can even comprehend?
Yeah.
The Wall Street Journal, I believe it was the Wall Street Journal, put out an article a week or two ago, a few weeks back, talking about how I think it's by 2030 the middle class is going to be decimated.
Yeah.
I'm already seeing it in the world of consulting where I have friends who are losing contracts on a daily basis because they're not needed anymore.
Yeah. Because you can go online and you type in the question that you would normally ask somebody who has spent years learning the answer to, and AI will give you an answer in 3 seconds,
Right.
you know,
And so we
and
look at all of this and we're saying all of this and what we've told veterans, right? I mean, when you look at I know you hear this whenever our veterans are our leaders. They're our best people in the world. We need to celebrate them. They're the most amazing people we have. They're our
yeah,
leaders until you get out and you're like, hey, I want to go do this. Well, you should go to school first because you got no education.
yeah.
Are
And
you,
I think
are you
the
fucking serious
biggest,
with me right
yeah,
now?
the biggest lie that they tell to veterans when they go to get out is the job market is just hungry for veterans. And then these guys get out and they're like, "Hey, yep, I got my DD-214. I've got like all these different, military certifications and all this stuff. I want to get a job." And they're like, "Cool. Thank you for your service. Other than that, we could care less, or we
Yeah.
could not care less about your military service.
Yeah.
But thank you for serving because that was very nice of you to serve. Uh, you can go ahead and just take a seat out there with everybody else because other than the thank you, we don't care." And it
No, and we
and
should just be honest about that. And that's okay.
yeah,
Their job is to only care about us while we're there.
yeah,
As
yep,
soon as we leave, our seat gets filled by another body.
yeah,
And that person is the one that they need to care about, right?
yeah,
So
yep,
that's why we slide over to the VA. And I don't have a
yeah,
problem with sliding over to the VA. Where I have a problem when we slide over to the VA is what are we selling? What are we telling? Right?
yeah.
Um, you had talked about wanting to piss people off, so here you go.
Well, we're
Like
here.
the biggest scam we do to veterans and is I'm going to catch so much shit for this one. The biggest scam that we do to veterans right now is that we give veterans who have PTSD a service dog.
Okay.
And let me explain why.
Yeah,
It is not that I'm against those veterans having a service dog. I believe it helps them. I believe that that dog can make a huge difference in their life, and I am all for it until it becomes a crutch
yeah,
that they use to interact with society, that they use to become a victim, that they use to get their attention, that they use in an improper way for what it's meant for.
yeah,
Because a service dog is a massive investment that is given to that veteran, usually
yes.
around $35,000 to $40,000, right?
And I can confirm that because I actually have I haven't announced anything officially yet, but I'm working with a medical service dog company that provides PTSD dogs to veterans, and that number is very accurate. So
And so,
it is
like,
extremely expensive and time intensive as well.
this is not me sitting here downing service dogs. Okay.
Yeah.
I just
No,
want to be
I
clear.
understand what you're
I
saying.
want to be
I
clear
completely
on that.
understand what you're saying. Yeah.
What I want to say is when we give someone a tool, that
Yep.
tool is meant to help them climb the ladder to recovery, not
Yes.
so that when that dog passes on, they get in the queue for another service dog and then another one and then another one.
Yeah.
Because if they continue to need that each time, they are stealing. I'm sorry, but they're stealing resources that other people can and should get. And
But I
you should,
completely agree with that sentiment because you look at guys that get on, SSRIs or, SNRIs or other antipsychotics or whatever it is, medicine, and the medication is a tool.
right,
And if you just sit on it for 5, 10, 15, 20 years and you never do anything to try and heal beyond taking the medicine, it's not going to do anything. It's just, it helps mask your symptoms to the point where you're able to function while on the medication. But the second that medication stops, you haven't improved at all. You're literally in the exact same place you were at before. And I am a culprit of this as well because I have been taking I was on medication. I've been on an SSRI since 2012. And for while I was in the military, I did nothing to improve my mental health. And I got out in 2017. So when I got out, the added stress of getting out I mean, it just knocked me for all kinds of loops, and the medicine was no longer helping me because it was helping mask the symptoms of my PTSD and the stuff that I dealt with, when I got on the medication. When you added anything to that, it was no longer helpful. It
right,
only helped to the point that it had been helping. So then I realized, oh, I actually need to go get therapy, and not just necessarily therapy. I also needed to improve my relationship with Christ and improve my relationship with God and say, okay, I can no longer sit here and coast on this medication or on, what I had been doing and not doing. And when it was fully presented to me, it was like, okay, so the medication is just a tool. It's a stepping stone up, like you said,
exactly.
it's a rung on that ladder. And I'm not opposed to people taking medication. And again, I've heard a lot of people say that they are opposed and they feel like it's not really helping people. And I think there's a lot more that needs to be done as far as researching that and kind of
Yeah,
figuring out if it is truly effective or but what I can speak from is my experience. When I
right,
got on the medication, it really helped level my emotions out because I would be up here like ragey and then I would be really depressed. And then I'd be ragey and I'd be really depressed. When I started taking the medication, it kind of put me in the middle. I would get upset
right,
and then I would get a little bit sad and then I would get upset, but it was like I wasn't like this. It was more just
right.
kind of this.
Which is the same thing people who use cannabis say, right? Is it
Yes.
just evens them out?
Yep. And
Well,
I think that those are they're great tools to use while you start figuring out, okay, why am I getting super ragey? Like, what is the issue that's causing it? Because it's not the fact that my kids left toys on the floor and I stepped on one of them. That's not why my fuse is
right,
0. That's what tipped it over the edge, and again, if you have a dog and that dog is there with you and and it's just, you're using that as your sole support and you're not doing anything else to improve. Like you said, once that dog goes away, because the dog can only live, 10, maybe 15 years at the most. And then all of a sudden, your dog's passed away and you're back at square one.
right.
So
Well,
I
and
completely
is that,
agree with that.
I've said this to veterans friends before. You know, they when they lose their dog, right? Because I've been around
Yeah.
long enough with some of these friends that now they've lost their dogs,
Yeah.
and I have one friend who she made the transition. Like she had the dog, and then um, she was able to move the transition. She still has a service dog, but she does a lot of traveling without it now. And like
Yeah.
that's the point of it, right? Like that
Yes.
is what you're trying to get to. So like when it comes to like beyond the moon. Like, she always impresses the shit out of me. We've been riding the same journey since 2016 when we first met. So it's like to see her continue to climb like this. But she is part of the reason I say this, right? Is like
Yeah.
all of these things are tools. And if you're not doing other work to help the tools get dull and they stop working. And then
Yeah.
you find yourself back at square one and you haven't made any progress moving forward. And so many of us get into this mindset that it's like, you know, oh, my best days were in the military and, we're sitting on couches or we're doing this. And then I'm like, why?
Yeah.
Why? What
Yep.
purpose is that? Right. So, um, and a lot of these individuals, um, they weren't, they're just not highly motivated people in the first place. I'm
Right.
not trying to sound like a dick when I say that. There are a section of these people who see the ability to take advantage and then they don't have to do anything. I think that
Yes.
part of it is, less than 10%. I'd like to believe. I mean, maybe there's
Right.
some numbers out there. I don't know. Um, but overall, like, it's just a matter of doing the work. Do you want to get better or do you not? And if
Right.
you do, what are you willing to do that for? And so if you have a dog and that dog has done its job for life and you lose that dog, you're not honoring its memory by going and getting another dog. You're honoring its memory by not needing a dog.
Right.
Do you see what I mean? I'm
Yep.
not telling people that,
Yes.
okay,
No.
I don't ever get a dog again. I'm
Yeah.
just saying, like,
Right.
we have this, it becomes our identity.
This dog spent its life working to help you get better. And
Right.
then as soon as the dog passes on, you run out and grab another one.
Right.
And it's like, so what did the first dog do for you? And,
Why aren't we
it's,
asking that question of veterans?
yeah.
And why aren't we asking that question of the veteran nonprofits that provide service dogs?
Yeah. Yeah.
How
No,
many
that's a
of
very
these
good point.
service?
I mean, because the one that I'm working with, they actually, they have a very good program where they provide the dog. They specifically train the dogs for what this veteran wants to do, whether he's a hiker, if he likes to kayak, if he likes to go to Disney World, if he likes to go on cruises, whatever it is. They train this dog that way when they go and do their things, whatever they like to do, their hobbies, this dog is ready for it. Um, Not only do they provide the dog, they provide veterinary care for the dog. They pay for it. So if the dog needs to go to the vet, they pay for it, but they also provide medical care for the veteran and their family while they have this dog. And this is through a provider they have. So they kind of they take the extra step of providing medical care,
That's
or I'm sorry,
amazing.
mental health care. Yeah, and that's why I wanted to join with them, because they're taking steps beyond just giving them a dog. They're
Do you
not just
feel
saying,
comfortable in sharing their name on? Because you
yes.
should.
So I actually, I'm gonna, and again, this is where I'm waiting on some merchandise from them so I can go ahead and do an unboxing and an announcement. But it's Guardian Angel Medical Service Dogs out of Florida,
Okay.
and they contacted me and were like, "Hey, we really love your message about actually trying to heal and not just stay
Yeah.
where you're at." And I was like, well, I mean, that's what I want people to do, is actually heal and not just treat the symptoms and stay, stuck in the rut they're in. And they said, that's exactly what we're trying to do with our dogs. Is we train them. We specifically train them for each specific veteran. And then not only do they get the veterinary care paid for, so they don't have that added financial burden, we provide mental health care services through a mental health care provider that they've partnered with. So that way they can get, and it's not just for the veteran, it's for their family as well, because a veteran doesn't exist in a bubble. They have a
No.
family. They've got a
What's
wife, they've
affected
got
me is
kids,
what's affected me is hit the kids, it's hit the wife. I
ex-
mean, you know this.
yes.
It
Yep.
transfers to the whole family.
Exactly. And that's what, they provide this for all of them. That way they can say, hey, my my son is dealing with, X, Y, and Z. Can he, and then they get put in touch with a mental health care provider, and they're able to get services through these, through the same company, and it's all free of charge.
That's cool.
So, and
And
it's a cool company. It's really neat. And I'm going to be
that's,
doing a,
that's better than, well, I won't say their name. I don't like to
there's
disparage.
a bunch out there, and
Well,
I think a lot of them
this one is
have,
it's a pretty prominent one that I'm gonna
yeah,
say. But what I'll get at is that, you know, when it was started by someone who was just an amazing individual, and unfortunately that person, you know, passed away, and their kids took over, and it was still, from what I understood, you know, and the reporting back, still just as heartwarming and as amazing as it was, you know, when it was first
yeah,
started. And then, like everything, you know, people didn't like the direction they're going, and so the kids got pushed out and they're no longer involved. And it's like, it's not,
yeah,
you know, I mean, each of
yeah,
these nonprofits have a story like that, right? You've got
yeah,
Wounded Warrior Project. When you really dig back into the beginning of it, people don't really realize that, like, the guy who actually founded Wounded Warrior Project has nothing to do with Wounded Warrior Project.
yes. Yep. And
And
that's, I wonder, getting into nonprofits in general, what's frustrating is you have to even start a nonprofit is you have to have a board,
Mhm.
and you have to have people. And I haven't started one. So if I'm incorrect, please tell me. I've just researched it because I know I'm planning on starting one in the future. I'm still setting up everything else, but having it, it's almost like setting up your own downfall, because it's like, you have to have a board, and you're going to have people on this board that when you start off, they're going to agree with you because they're probably going to be close friends and family, or somebody that you're able to approach and kind of sell the idea to. And you're the one selling it to them. You're the one with the passion. You're the one with the drive. They see that, they agree with it. They get on board. Eventually you have to step down. You can't run it forever, right? You're either going to die, you're going to get sick, or you're going to move on. You're going to have something else, and you're going to put somebody in charge, but the board still has to stay, and the board members are going to change out as well, right? And it's like, eventually someone's going to be like, why are we doing it this way? And, someone's going to say, well, because the original founder, had this desire and he wanted to do it this way. Well, we could do it this way and it would make more money, or it would be more efficient. And it just takes away from the mission just this much. And everybody's like, okay, let's do that. Then the next person's like, well, what about this? And it takes away this much more, and then this much more, and then this much more. And then eventually you're like, you're so far off course. You're like, what are we even doing?
right.
And I don't know. And that's another conversation for,
Well, I
that's a
mean,
whole nother conversation, but
it's a part of, I think it's a definite huge part of the conversation. I don't know if I agree with it's another part of the conversation. I think it's the
yeah,
conversation that should be being had. Like, when you
yeah,
look across the veteran community right now, as a whole, um, you have a lot of infighting about what's
yeah,
going on. I'm not going to dig into all of that shit. I'm not special. I'm not one of those special guys. I don't proclaim or profess to be one of those special guys. So, you know, I'm going to tread lightly here when I say this, but, like,
yeah,
um, we as a community and those individuals with the kind of clout that they have should be turning that clout towards the community and how we can do good, rather than using that clout and community to go after one another and make us all look like a bunch of
yeah,
jackasses
yeah,
in front of the people that we still need to be charitable to us,
yeah,
because in a time when we're no longer at war and people
yeah,
are drastically moving away from supporting veterans. I mean,
yeah,
the numbers of veteran support keep falling. The
yeah,
poll numbers of public opinion of veterans keep falling. And there's a reason all of this is happening. And it's partly because of us. It's partly because of how we're being used as political pawns and
Yeah.
theater right now. And we don't have veterans on, necessarily on the right who are like, no, 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 no. You're not going to do this. And you're not going to like, for example, this will come out long after this, but right now we're looking at trying to fund the government, right? And it is
Yeah.
not likely we're going to be able to pass an entire budget by the time that we need to. So we're going to need to do a continuing resolution. From
Yeah.
a VA
Again.
perspective, there is a really important amendment that needs to be in this continuing resolution, and that is the Fox grants.
Okay.
So if the Fox grants don't get renewed by a certain time frame, date and time, they go away. And the
Yeah.
reason the Fox grants are so important is that it is this huge pool of money where local nonprofits across the country are able to dip in and, apply for a grant and dip into these funds because the larger nonprofits are not sharing that money anymore. So on
Hmm.
average, when you look at, the two biggest fundraisers of money in the veteran pocket and space are Wounded Warrior Project, obviously,
Yeah.
and um, the Bob Woodruff Foundation.
Okay.
And the Bob Woodruff Foundation, their grants, money comes in, you apply, they have grant cycles, the money goes out, all of that. I mean, and then there are some bigger ones that they deal with directly and might even help run. But I mean, they're pushing money out. WWP, and I was told this directly when I was at their Warrior Advocate leadership training. If we have anyone that we want or we feel like should deserve to be able to get a grant, there is a process that we can internally recommend somebody for a grant. But at this
Hmm.
point, WWP doesn't put out grants anymore.
I how does that work where you have a nonprofit that is issuing grants? I thought they would be like applying for and accepting grants.
Well, they can, and they can issue it too, as long as it's going to another nonprofit.
Okay, so they're getting, correct me if I'm wrong, it sounds like Wounded Warrior Project is getting a ton of grants and a lot of money, and they decide who they want to give that money to,
Well,
like
and it
other
depends,
nonprofits.
right? So, like, if they apply for a grant for their suicide prevention program, right, then
Yeah.
that grant will go towards their suicide prevention program.
Okay.
Donations are the donations that come in from the private sector are
Yeah.
the ones that they use to issue grants.
Okay. So they're getting donations and they can decide if they want to issue a grant from that pool of donations. Okay.
Mhm. Yeah.
Okay. And then
And
that is that
honestly, like,
where, go ahead.
what I would say to you is don't be in any rush to start a nonprofit. I specifically
Yeah.
didn't start one. Hand Up
Okay.
LLC is a for-profit social impact company.
Yeah.
Um, Meaning I try to I take more than I bring in, way
Yeah.
more. I hope that changes at some point because I can't
Right.
sustain this direction
Right. Yeah.
much longer. But I always spend more than I take in, and in
Yeah.
doing different things. So, like for example, November 15th, I'm going to do a big event in South Bend, Indiana. And the recipient of that event is Stop 22 Michiana. They're a nonprofit that works with veterans and really people who are suicidal in the South Bend, Michiana area, Michigan, Indiana border. And
Yeah.
so I reached out to my friends at the Indiana Dino Museum and South Bend Chocolate Company. I've known the owner for 20 plus years. And I was like, hey, I want to do this event. I want to do it in a way where If people are giving donations, 100% of it goes to the organization. And we as individual businesses utilize our skill set to uplift that business. And so he was like, I'm game. I'm on because I'm going to drive traffic, marketing, we're going to create marketing events and pictures, all kinds of things that they can then push out over the course of a year. Right.
Yeah.
And in doing that, the hope is that we raise money for that, organization. On a
Yeah.
larger scale, that's where I'm taking this to, even with Instagram. So I've been toying with the subscriber community and what I want to do with that. And where I've decided that I want to land is in the subscriber community. I want to help people grow their social media. I want to help you filter through all the bullshit. No charge. I mean, you got that small monthly thing, but no
Mm-hmm.
charge. One day a week, I'll come on for a couple hours. People can ask me whatever I want. I can throw some videos that I've already made that have done well, that I know will do well, just based on algorithm and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to create a community of people, but I want to use that money to go across the US to do exactly what I'm doing in South Bend
Yeah.
and create an insurgence for somebody, a veteran small business owner, a veteran nonprofit, a veteran who is just volunteering a lot and needs a new roof. Fuck, I don't give a shit what it is, right? Let's go
Yeah.
tell their story. And
Yeah.
because what we're doing now is we're telling veterans stories who are broken, and we reward them to stay broken. I want to
Right.
switch that narrative, and I want to tell stories of veterans who are rising
Yeah.
and helping their community rise at the same time. And then I want to use my platform to try, to be a tide that rises all boats. And
Yeah.
so all of that, I believe, can be done without having to be a nonprofit. Now, is it easier to get
Yeah.
money? Fuck yes. Yes. Because it's just the donation, right? Otherwise,
Yeah.
we've got to
Yeah.
create marketing campaigns. You've got more work into it. Um, but I don't have to answer anybody
Yeah.
except God, myself, and my wife, right? My wife
Right.
keeps
Yeah.
everything like on track as far as the finance. No, you can't do that. You can do this. You can't. Because if it were me, I'd be spending all our money too. Um, because it's what
It's
I
for a better
enjoy.
cause. It's for a better cause. Just let me
Well,
spend it.
and then the other side to it is, and I get yelled at about this all the time, is I don't put any of this shit on social media.
Yeah. Yep.
I've always done more of a faceless account where I pop
Yeah.
on every now and then, but I'm a writer. The caption is where you're getting me, right? So if you look
Right.
at my Instagram account, it's really like a journal of my journey for the past few years, right? And my growth, especially if you go through and read them all.
Yeah.
Um, and that's kind of how I look at Instagram, is that's my journal. Obviously, I'm not sharing some of the more personal stuff that you would necessarily in a journal, but there really
Mm-hmm.
isn't anything that's off limits for me. I'll speak about anything
Right.
because at the end of the day, if you're not willing to, then it stays in the dark, and that's where the
Yeah.
cracks start to begin, and that's where the devil comes in, and then the voices
Yep.
start that you're not good enough, you're not going to make it, and it's already hard enough to climb, which I know you know.
Yeah.
Like So anyways, what I would say is don't be in a hurry to do that, because you
Yeah.
could do a whole lot of good without even needing it. And that
Yeah.
platform is really what will allow for that good to happen.
Yeah.
Um, and it's not because it generates money. I'm still trying to figure that one out.
Right. Yeah. You're like, how can I do this and make enough money to survive? and
Well,
maybe
I
and
mean,
maybe have a little extra.
right. Like for me,
Yeah.
I want to, my goal is real simple. I want to get out of debt. That's the big That's the big thing for me. I don't need to make, millions of dollars. Hell, I don't even need to make hundreds of, I don't need to make $500,000.
Yeah.
You know, I want to get to a point where when you're building something, you're always going to end up going into debt
Yeah.
to build it.
Yep.
And so for me, the sooner that I can get out of that debt, the more empowered I'll feel,
Yeah.
and be able to feel like I can, push this out at a bigger scale and a larger scale. Because
Right.
the one thing, you know, that everyone knows is that once you start hitting a certain level, that's when everyone starts reaching out, and that's when everyone
Yep.
wants a piece of you. And I'm not really a team player. I mean, I can be, and I
Yeah.
am in the right circumstances, but wrong is
Yep.
wrong in my world. And
Yeah.
so, even if somebody on the team that I identify with is doing something wrong, I'm still going to call them out. And
Yeah.
that doesn't always necessarily go so well as you're trying to
Right.
grow. So for me, especially talking so much about God and how God healed me, it's been
Yeah.
difficult because a lot of people will say, "Hey,
Yeah.
man, we'll sponsor you in a heartbeat. You want a podcast? We'll give you a podcast. You don't have to pay for anything. We'll schedule. We'll
Yeah.
do everything. All you got to do is show up and be the host.
Yeah.
Can't talk about God."
Hey guys, quick reminder, if you enjoyed the episode today, don't forget to like and subscribe. Also, go to whatever platform you listen to these podcasts on and leave a review. That's the best way to help us out. It gets a lot more traffic to us. So again, if you liked it, like, subscribe, and leave a review. All right, love you guys.